Okay. Nimbula Vinaka. Nakapakilevuna sema mai veke menina viakani o ni sema tiko mai na singa Vinaka ni kua vambulu tika ni gobe Sassy Bex Peterson sema sartungo komi o Kalandi New Zealandi o ni taka ni ke vara tiko mai o eta ngone rongo e na ndona ngona leka ngona sema talanga mikino koe kere bibu se tuka ni veke menina sawawa de tiko wara kiro tiko na marama mero sema mai keroni taka ni na sema talanga mai o maramana ita eta e na ve Talanoa ngondo tiko na ulutanga bimbi ulutanga sanga ni rao mi da Talanoa taka au kila ni bunga weekend da barong tiko mena kabinang ni kua enta kila na be kaya do na korabak turang on reo au beturu kina na ngono ngomo waktu lo sakatiko e na bintel ni au tambo kere sara e na be saibiti waktu lo tal tingan na bubale waktu ranga e na rewa e na bubale ni kele resibo e na bekai maiado e na mata saoti kau nanuma kina meu te kabutaka ndo na Talanoa e na sika Vinaka ni kona ulutanga ni viva ya na bika ndrendre ya tiko na loma ni ndo na loma ni bale sena bika ibala kuko mbeka e ada tiko na loma ni bale wa ndo na marama se buatalanga e ndo na turanga kona ulutanga na bitanga tiko na moni madongo saru tiko bu e rona marama o amele tambu e tarkin me New York bakatalanga kino choka beti Hudson Sacramento California ke to sa tiko bu na ilalo ya Amerika ngosa ke to ngale ni New Zealand sa sema mengo o Sassy na marama to kila nindo langsere marami kilitani e na mbuturara ni langsere ndo babi Vinaka ni tiko Sassy na kai sema talanga mo eta ngone rongo ni ro marama ndo langsere ro rua karo baka ngataka na non roi bata ni langsere me baka rambele bute kina na non kila me baka na bi baka surara ta kina lomani bali ero ni rona wasia na beka ero la kodoronga ya me baka ngana kini baka rawa bungo beka mnio nindo sema tiku mai na nongo program au kila nindo tiku bu en ndo na sere ya na maramongo na senga ni langa sere enda na rongoda nando Moisesi endo na sere ya bita batoko na dana tiko na Lewa Strong na maramongo na buni nongo sureti Sassy tiku butako ko endo na program si doni bata ka nganrebo ko mera baka yalong kanga te kikina na ngone leo endo na bata nganrebo ko mera baka yalong kanga te kikina na maram na ela tiku ni na program na Lewa Strong na ngai baka madala kino ko na singo Vinaka ni ko e na rongo da manda na nona ser na nona bola ser nga ko na ser go member leta ni bata go na Lewa Strong me na rongo da ser
generations of girls to lead with integrity and pray for an undivided nation. That's how Fiji's meant to be. The time has come to stand our ground, to tell the world to trust our girls. We got this Lewa Strong. We are the bearers of living treasures, forever carrying the visionaries. Be fearless, Lewa Strong. Have faith in our future generations of girls to lead with integrity and pray for an undivided nation. That's how Fiji's meant to be. Oh, politicians, we are musicians, we're engineers and we're pioneers. Push boundaries, Lewa. Lewa Strong, have faith in the future generations of girls to lead with integrity and pray for an undivided nation. That's how Fiji's meant to be. Have faith in the future generations of girls to lead with integrity and pray for an undivided nation. That's how Fiji's meant to be. Keep smiling, Lewa. Lewa Strong.
Yes, rong vinakandina. Vinakapakalevu Sassy, vinakapakalevu Bex, nanomu bitavatana seret. Such a beautiful song. So can you tell us a little bit about that song, Sassy? Bula Jairi?
I have my partner in crime here. Bula Vinaka Keve. Thank you so much, Nay, for having me on today. I just want to really acknowledge you for addressing this big issue that's obviously quite critical at the moment, and for just talking about Lewa Strong as well. The movement was established in 2018, so a few years now. Basically came out of my own situation, very much understanding about what so many of our Lewas do go through, our women and our girls in Fiji, and really more around the Pacific. That, yeah, there's probably less equality and maybe a lot of tambu, I would say, around these issues you've addressed, domestic violence, and, you know, the things that come with that, which we really would say are mental health, well-being, things like that. So, yeah, and just the sort of gendered roles, gendered roles that we have in traditional homes, maybe around Fiji, that sometimes our girls have less rights, or they might feel like they don't have the same opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted our girls to feel empowered. Sorry, I have a toddler. And yeah, I wanted the girls to feel empowered, and I wanted to really say that, you know, we can all unite together, and that I guess the message is that it doesn't disempower our men to have empowered women. We want to allow us to feel valued, and I think that if the value was there and the mutual respect was there, like we were discussing, you know, traditional values in Fiji, where I think that existed, and around the Pacific, then I think maybe we would see less of these incidents, you know, of domestic violence, if the mutual respect was there.
Before we go into the discussion of the Lewa Strong movement, which is an amazing platform, I should say, that you have started, but I just want to take it to a phrase that you shared with me before we went live, which is what we said, and I quote, you said, you know, silence promotes violence. And I understand that, you know, what happened in Fiji, you were very familiar with it. We also acknowledge the family of Kelera Sivo, and her family and her children in particular, with the tough times that they're going through right now. It's still very raw. You know, people are still emotional about what surrounded that. So that kind of contributed to this conversation that I want to kickstart this weekend, you know, to make our Wubale, our family, to openly talk about these things. As you mentioned, you know, sometimes there are a lot of cultural taboos that disable a lot of us, you know, to hide, you know, information, to not to report because of the family name and all of those things. Let's go back to that phrase, silence promotes violence. Tell me about it. What you thought about that phrase itself.
Yeah, I didn't come up with it. I wouldn't take credit, but I found it really powerful because it's so relatable. And I know that, well, I don't know who's watching, but for anyone who doesn't know personally who I am, just to give some background, you know, I've been connected with Fiji for a long time now. I think, you know, Nay, you and I met probably 15, 16 years ago when we were linked through marriage, and and you've been a close auntie of mine ever since. And you know that I've lived in Fiji a long time. I've lived in New Zealand in Fijian communities as well. And something about intercultural marriage that I mentioned to you is that once you marry into a culture, a part of your other culture drops aside. If you really are committed to the marriage, especially as women, we tend to take it on. We tend to really embrace it and make it work as best we can by becoming one with the culture of our husband, you know. That's what happened for me. And I taught myself Fijian as much as I could. I, you know, sang at all the kava sessions and really embrace the culture, love it. I'm very in love with Fiji and Fijian culture, and it is my culture. You know, I've taken it on for myself. But I think what comes with that is there's plus and minus, you know. So identity can be very hard because you don't exactly fit in, but you've also stopped fitting in completely with who you were before. And it's sort of this third culture that happens. So I myself also got caught up with the silence issue of there's shame. So if you find yourself in a bit of a toxic or abusive relationship and you didn't see it coming, you know, there's a lot of shame around, maybe I've made a bad choice here, or maybe my family are going to say I'm bringing shame to the family, or all of those sort of things. And if you're in an intercultural marriage, there's sort of another layer there, because there's less understanding around the culture you've married into. And so you tend to hide it. You tend to hide it because it's like there's no understanding. It's not going to be easy to explain this. It's you know, there'll be no empathy. And you want the best for your family. All of us want the best for our family. We want to have our family stay together. And so I think yeah, my experience in Fiji was, who can I tell? Because I can't tell my in-laws. That's my husband's family. And all women would feel that way. And I can't really tell my own family because that's shameful, or, you know, there's other things that we feel. And I think religion and faith come into it as well. That's where this silence thing really plays up, because we feel like, well, we should just pray about this, and, you know, I'm sure we can overcome it as a family. And I'm a strong Christian, and I do believe that, you know, God can intervene, but at the same time, people need to have the heart to come in. And sometimes it's one person saying, can we pray about this? Can we pray? But you need both. And it's not always going to be the case. So that's where the silence really ends up promoting the violence, because you stay quiet, and you stay quiet out of fear as well. Because if you do say something and the perpetrator finds out, the repercussions, as we know, are huge, not just for the woman, but for the children. Yeah.
Bex, for sharing that, and that's really important because our listeners, many of them will be, you know, of indigenous background, Fijian, or even from the Pacific, who often listen to our program. This is something for all of us to think about, and you know, listen and find solutions. I think that's what this program is all about. It's looking at action-oriented solutions. How can we sort certain problems that, you know, that is common across families? So Vinaka Vakalevu Bex for, you know, coming in this afternoon. I know it's a very important Sunday for you, and Jairi is there needing your attention, but Vinaka Vakalevu for, you know, sitting here with us and sharing your story. Now, as I was telling you before, an hour ago, I had the privilege of hosting two of our Maramani Viti here in the US, Mele Tambwe Tarakinikini connecting in from New York, and Chokaveti Hudson connecting in from Sacramento. And what they mentioned earlier on was a phrase as well. I wrote it down somewhere here. See something, say something. That was a phrase that was also talked about. So in terms of domestic violence, you know, most of the time, like as you said, there's shame and there's fear, you know, that comes out for within us. You know, if I tell the police, or if I talk about whatever happened at home, you know, the repercussion will come back and bite me. What are your thoughts about that phrase? See something, say something.
Yeah, I think it's very important. It's a really great phrase, and I think it's much harder to do than we realize because of well, I guess the stigma around it all and the tambu. But I would encourage, for me personally, I had to find strength to tell the right people. You don't just tell anyone. I would say that. Be careful about who you talk to, but find someone that you trust. And the other thing is that this may be a trigger warning for some people needed, that some people might be feeling triggered. And you're going through this situation right now. And I just want to acknowledge that this is very triggering. If you're going through some trauma in your home, we acknowledge it. And we don't want you to feel more trauma because of this situation. But I'm sure that I can support Nay Teresi here, and we can get some context for you to reach out to the right people to talk to in Fiji or online. I just wanted to say that there is help, and there's free counseling available in Fiji. And I know a couple of really great organizations, either on the phone or face-to-face, who we can get behind. And I've discovered them through my journey. So, it's not loud out there that, these things exist, these organizations, but they are there. If you really need them, the resources are limited, but you can get to them. So I would just say, do tell someone, and be careful who you tell, because you want someone that is trusted and someone that will take it seriously is the other thing. I know in the past when I've sometimes shared it with someone who didn't maybe view it as seriously as I did, that it only kind of made it is like escalated the problem for me, because I felt more isolated. So you don't want that, I guess, is what I'm saying. Is it may be very difficult if you're in a rural setting, or you don't really feel like you have anyone to reach out to. But if you have the internet, what I'm saying is there's some online support that you can find. And I'm also available on my platforms at any time. If any person who is in this situation feels like they need someone to talk to, please reach out to me. Lewa Strong movement is all about supporting and empowering our women and supporting our men to get the right help, which is another part of it. But that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Vinaka Bakalivo, so for those of you who are listening in, who just joined in, Vinaka Bakalivo for accompanying me and Sassy this afternoon. And I know Etangone Wrong is going to join us at some point. We're looking forward to have her share her story as well. She was able to share her story on Facebook a couple of days ago after she heard the situation in Narewa. So I really want to acknowledge a lot of our a lot of our women who are sharing these stories online. Vinaka Bakalevu, I just want to acknowledge your strength and power to be able to brave the public scrutiny, maybe if you say it that way, but we admire, your dedication to save someone's life by sharing your story, by sharing your pictures. So wrong, if you're listening in or watching this Talanoa, we just want to acknowledge the photos that you shared. It's very painful to see what you went through, but the bravery that came out of reading your story was amazing. And we know that what you are sharing is going to touch someone's life, that they can be able to take action before they lose their life. The Bex, before we started the previous Talanoa, we talked about different types of abuse. We talked about mental abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and sexual abuse, financial abuse, and physical abuse. So it's quite a long list, and I know this topic is very sensitive. Is there a particular, using your Lewa Strong movement, a particular focus that you work with at the moment?
It's all forms of abuse. I think I've actually been trying to what I've been trying to do is really get some understanding and some language around it that is accessible, because I think that some of these things are really new concepts in the Pacific, especially because of the tambu. We wouldn't necessarily use those words, like financial abuse. It seems foreign. It seems like a strange concept, but I can tell you from personal experience, it really is. It's a real thing. And a lot of women, when you break it down, they'll say, oh yes, that's actually, I'm going through that, or I've been through that. Yeah. So things like financial abuse, where really all the finances are controlled. You're not, there's no transparency. You're sort of held captive financially, and it can be very scary. It's another form of taking your power away. So part of my project and the impact I'm having with Lewa Strong and future impact, what's wrong, is actually to get labels that are accessible for our Pacifica community, and work on that so that we can start having some dialogue and some Talanoa that's also culturally responsive and appropriate and accepted. I think that sexual abuse in marriage is something that's a big taboo. Rape, marital rape, would probably be one of the hardest things for women in Fiji to talk about. I'm just going to use Fiji as an example. It's very challenging to have to go and report that your own husband has raped you, partly because of the response you get, and the fact that people talk, and all of, we know people talk about these things, and also the shame. And I think the feeling that it's your own fault, or something like that, for women. So Etta and myself as singers, we've been up against it already with a lot of public scrutiny, as you said, Nay. So I suppose for us, there's less risk because we're used to it, and we've got a thick skin, and we have a platform, and we're used to the social media thing where some comments might just have to be deleted. And we face that stuff, but we're willing to put ourselves out there because we are a voice for the voiceless. And those things have to be talked about. If they're not, they continue, and they kind of end up getting bigger and bigger. And that's what we've been seeing with the rape statistics in Fiji. And my big thing is which Lewa Strong leads with now, is that 2 out of 3 girls or women in Fiji will experience partner violence, including rape, in their lives. 2 out of 3. And that is not acceptable.
That's huge terrible statistic there.
Terrible statistic. So we need to change it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Amel Tarkinkini earlier on found some data. Thank you for bringing up the 2 out of 3 women going through that partner violence. That's high, really
Very
high. Especially for a small population, small countries, Fiji. She mentioned here in terms of the data, the FBC put up a data 72% of domestic violence abuse in Fiji. And I keep saying Women's Crisis Center, 64%, still high. What are your thoughts about that, Bex, since you lived in Fiji and hearing those data?
Yeah, I've realized that there's a systemic issue with it, and it's, I think that the data is one thing. We have to look at the statistic and get a shock from it, but the next thing, that's the harder thing, is to change it. And changing it is about it's always about self-reflection. And I think as a nation, or in Pacifica, and even in New Zealand, which is part of the Pacific, there tends to be really high stats there on these kind of issues. And so why is that? It's asking why. And from what I've experienced in New Zealand, but in living in Fiji and living in Pacific communities here, especially with the gendered roles, like I spoke about earlier, these seem to happen really early in life, that our girls and boys are separated. And I've seen with my own children, they've been kind of assigned certain roles, specific roles, according to their gender, that instantly creates this toxic masculinity. We get this macho thing. And, I'll take a risk and use my children as an example, but I see, my daughter gets told to wash the dishes, and the boys will sit and watch the TV, and they'll just sit after eating, and the girls are expected to clean up. And, I think, how are we going to help our sons to become good citizens and good husbands and good fathers, if that's the model, if that's what we're starting to set up for young kids, 4 or 5-year-olds, that they think that they can do that. And so then the girls are essentially like a maid or a slave. We get that young sort of gendered roles thing. And that macho thing, the issue with that is not that we don't want our boys to be strong and masculine, we do, but we want them to know how to process their emotions. So when we tell the boys, don't cry, are you a girl? Which is a common, if we translate from Fijian, that's a common expression, like you're like a girl if you cry. All we're doing is we're bottling emotion up for them, and they push it down. And then at some point, like a volcano, that thing's going to come up. And it tends to come up later when they're big, strong guys and when their punch will do damage,
And then when they're married.
And when they're married, they take it out on someone who they see as less than them, because right from early in childhood, they were taught that they are superior, they're above, and the women tend to have less value. And it might not be what everyone thinks, but it is a general stigma that's still sticking, seems to be sticking, which I've experienced as well. So yeah, it's on us, the parents, we have to watch out that it doesn't slip into our behaviors. Yeah.
And I think you raised a really good point there, Bex, the importance of child rearing. Yes, from raising our children. And I think the gender plays a really, really important role, the gender roles. Girls expected to wash the dishes, clean up after everyone, doing all the chores, while the boys are allowed to do whatever they want, but also at the same time that expectation for them not to express themselves. When they cry, hey, kunitani, kunalewa. And then the boy started to, wipe their tears, or run out of the house. And we think it's okay. But if it's done over and over again, it becomes a norm for the boy not to express the emotions.
I think it's a hard thing to talk about, and I'm sure that some people will find this offensive, but we have to question why we're offended by it, because there's something else sitting there. If we're offended by it usually is something when you think about, why am I so offended about that? It's striking a chord, So one thing I would say is, like, I've lived in rural areas, I've lived in, on Taviuni Island. I've lived in those communities where the traditional way was still very much alive and well, like corporal punishment in the schools that my kids went to, and giving kids a good hiding. But the problem is with that is that it tends to go too far, because when the adults are angry and they're using force, that's a bit too much, like you have to process your anger and cool down. You should never hit a child when you're angry. Because we're too strong as adults and we have too much force, and the thing is that these kids, like the boys, if they're told not to cry, what I've actually seen happen, and this is in 2022, 23, like this, still now, the boys, if they're seen to cry, they get hiding for crying. And so the cycle is like going on like that. And so these poor boys grow up thinking like, don't cry. Okay, so, drink, hit something. That kind of, okay, I have to let it out somehow. And that's why we have this big drinking issue and, all the violence, because they have to let out steam somehow. And I guess my point being, I'm not a feminist. I'm not anti-men. I don't think that the men are bad people. I think that the behavior is wrong. And the way we're dealing with it as a whole overall community is not the right approach.
Yeah, nice. Vinaka, for your openness. There's some comments here. Thank you, Randini Akanisi Tarambi. She's commenting about the gender roles. You mentioned it's a really important topic. And I think she also mentioned here toxic masculinity. Yeah, really important words here. And I think a lot of our families that are listening in will all be reflecting on all our families. We have, even when you were talking, I started thinking of situations at home, when I'm saying, like, when I was growing up. I see that because I have brothers in the home, I have sisters,
Yes.
so I started to see that that's been something that's been passed down for generations, and I think it's about time, maybe as Itoke people, we need to kind of reflect on these things and see how can we make better, in how we teach our children, how can we better the find solutions, I think, on how we can raise boys to become responsible adults, when they grow older. Interesting, Bex, in the earlier discussion, we talked about the phrase domestic violence, and the word power and control came through in our Talanoa. So for you, Bex, in terms of the issues that you faced, one thing that we were talking about earlier too is how do we determine the signs of if someone is going through some issues at home? Because some of us are really good in hiding it. Kila? Salah ko may na black eye, sambil na makeup. Eh?
Yeah,
Kila? Salah ko
I walked into the
nakanyaka.
door. I ran into one door.
God, with all those
Come up with these
uh,
stories.
God, all the stories, how did you deal with that yourself, Bex? If that's okay if I ask you.
Yeah, it's okay. And I would say that probably it's complicated, but physical violence would be secondary to this psychological, emotional violence that's going on in, oh my gosh, I would say 97 or something percent of marriages, in Fiji that I know of. That's a high stat, but honestly, I would say it's high. It's a very high one. That on the whole, this emotional abuse thing is commonplace. It's pretty much the norm. So there's little things that women are going through all the time, like name calling, that no one sees. No one sees that. But now with technology, and this is a personal experience that I've shared with other women, and they've said the same thing. They'll even be receiving abusive texts from their partner at a songo or something like that, telling them to stop, flirting, things that they're not doing, but accusing them flirting or showing off, or, and name calling them. And even if they laugh, it's like a flirt, so there's all this sort of thing going on, and it builds until the point of like, they get home and one big, like argument, vemba sort of thing happens. And the woman's on the back foot already because he started to accuse her of stuff that, he believes she's done. And so then the physical thing happens. So once that's all happened, she's already like down solo. She doesn't want to talk to anyone, see anyone. So one sign is she's disappears from social circles. You don't see her for a while. That's an obvious one. If your friend suddenly is not answering phone calls or not wanting to come out anywhere, and you have a suspicion that there's been some abuse, you need to go and check on her. The best thing you can do is go and check on her and show up with someone strong that you feel safe to go with. Don't go alone. Because if you go to the house, chances are he's there and he's going to pretend everything's fine. But you'll be able to then get a look at her yourself. If you see any sign of physical abuse, you don't even actually have to talk to her about it. You'll know because you'll see it. And that's when you can think about some actions you can take to try and get her safe. So it might be that you say, I'll come again tomorrow and check on you again. And then, after some time, your presence will be, getting known that, okay, I'm not leaving this alone. Like, I'm aware. And then, maybe you try and have a talk with her. But it's about her feeling safe to talk. I think the best thing is if you can get her away and have a chat and say, like, we go for coffee. And then you can say, hey, I think you're not safe, why don't you make a plan? It's very, very hard to leave. I'm not encouraging people to leave a family. We love to have our families whole. But if your children are exposed to violence day in and day out, and I mean verbal as well, verbal abuse is violent too. If that is happening day in and day out, you are not being a good parent by staying with that person. I actually had to battle with that myself until my friends said to me, do you think that it's better for you to stay with your children to be exposed to that? Or is it better to leave and get them to be safe? And then I had to think, okay, actually, that's true. It's much better for children to feel safe. Even though the hardest thing for us is we feel like we are failing, we're breaking a family. It's a very big burden. But yeah, I would say, you try and help anyone in that situation to make a plan, at least to get out and get safe and have some time apart to think, at least have, sometimes some space can be good. And try and get help for the other person as well, some support, some counseling.
Sarah. Yeah, interesting. When you were saying counseling, and so in New Zealand and overseas we say therapy. Yeah, for you to
Mm,
go and get those kind of therapies and counseling. Sometimes it's seen as a weakness. When someone said, "Oh, I'm
mm,
I'm having I'm having a marriage counseling," or "I'm having some psychological therapies that I'm going through." What are
mm,
your thoughts about that? When you were in Fiji. Was
mm,
that something that people look up to, or in your circle, when you find women going through some tough times,
mm.
was going to counseling something that they talk about as an option?
It's really interesting for me because I taught at international school for 3 years. And, at the school, we had I think, two counselors, one for the lower uh, primary age and one for the seniors.
Mm,
And that was no one batted an eyelid because most of the teachers, not most, a lot of teachers there were from overseas or they'd done some training overseas. And so they'd been exposed to the
mm,
fact that getting a bit of counseling, a bit of therapy is a healthy thing to do. So, I've always said mental health is just health. It's just health. Um, but you know, when you go outside of a place like that and you're just living in your home and in the community, it's quite different. The thought of someone getting counseling or marriage counseling or the stigma around St. Giles, which is our sort of uh, I mean, I don't want to say it's a mental hospital because it's the wrong word, but it's the only place where you might find some psychotherapists, that know about quite serious mental health conditions.
mm,
That place has a major stigma, a major negative connotation. If someone is in social circles, if someone is acting a bit, crazy, being silly,
mm,
there'll often be a joke about you need to go off to St. Giles, and it's seen as like you're a nutcase.
mm,
So we know we have a big spoiling, a big joking culture, but I would say that that's one of the things we really need to address is that we should stop right now making fun of getting help for
mm,
mental conditions, which is simple as just anxiety. Anxiety is common now,
mm,
especially since the pandemic. A lot of people feel anxiety, and depression is quite a lot more common than you'd realize as well.
mm.
So anyway, we do have a lot of work to do there. We've got a lot of work to do with the stigma around it and the taboo around it and the fact that people find it like uncomfortable, awkward to talk about. And that I think is why not people don't really go for counseling when they should, and then things escalate. Yeah. I also think we've lost a lot of faith in our religious leaders to go and seek counsel because, and this is very hard to say out loud, but I will say that there's been so many rape cases attached to the church, various religious organizations. And so people have lost faith in going to get wise counsel from their religious leaders. And I think it's really sad. And
Mhm.
I think that that's another huge issue, but we can't write off everybody, but we need to say like all our
Mm.
religious leaders need to be really clear with their communities that it's a safe space and you
Safe
can
space.
come and seek counsel,
Mm.
and our schools as well. I really think counseling in schools is so important because that's where we have our teenagers and they're the ones, like
Mm.
with this incident with this poor woman who has been murdered. We were just saying, what about her 4 children? They're going to need a lot of wraparound care and support to get them through the trauma. So,
Yeah, no, Sarangai, because they eyewitnessed the whole situation too, which is worse.
very, very traumatic,
Mm.
very, very traumatic, and can't imagine it.
Then, then
Yeah,
Saranga. It's
yeah.
interesting what you just mentioned earlier. The topic of confidentiality. Yeah, and I think that's really true. In which there's element of fear and shame. Yeah, when people want to go and ask for help, and Fiji is
Yes,
a small place. If
yes,
someone goes and talk to a counselor or go and talk to a church or even go to the police,
yes,
they're bound to find someone that is related to them, even if they come to the police station. Okay? So,
yes,
and now with social media, even walking through the door of the police station door, someone can be taking photos of them, taking a video. and sharing it within the our social media platforms, or even within our family chat group. So I think that's something we need to talk about. Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but it happened to me. I'm laughing because of how true this is. You
Yeah.
know, imagine, okay, it's hard for any woman, but imagine being someone who has a profile like you or me, and you go to the. So I went to Totongo, and I tried to report an incident, and all the in the cells, and they're looking through, and they go, "Well, you're sassy," and I'm saying to the police officer that's asking me questions, I said, please, can we just, is there anywhere private we can go? And she said, ma'am, I'm sorry, you just have to just give me the, answer my questions here. I said, ma'am, please, this is like extra embarrassing because you're already coming in with something that's very sensitive. And then what's to make it worse, people are like looking, staring, as you said, they take photos, they'll like report it on social media, chat Fiji. And I think that on a more serious note, that is a huge reason why people don't report these things. Yeah.
So there's a lot of underreporting.
Yes.
Given the Women's Crisis Center 64%, which I think is quite low. I'm sure it's higher than that.
Yeah.
And FBC 72%. So I think there's a lot of our families and our pastors and Randiri Taratalas who are watching our Talanoa, and I hope that we need to use our platforms, for yours and mine, to talk about these topics openly, and encourage us to look for solutions. Yeah? Like, for example, our sister who passed away in Nandi, when I heard the news, she has 4 children and she's already pregnant, 4 months pregnant. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if she has 4 children, she must have been suffering through this abuse for a very long time. It will not be an overnight decision by the husband. And so I think one question I was going to ask as well, family support. What are your thoughts, Bex, in terms of family support for families, for women, and also the husband? You have to think of the husband as well, making that decision to do what he did that day. He did not even have his own support for him to share what was going through in his heart and mind about his concerns about the wife. What would you like to say about that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big issue that we need to face is why was he so full of anger, and why was he so violent towards her? Why would he go to the point of killing his unborn child, which I'm sure was not his desire? If he was in a calmer state of mind, I'm sure he's devastated now. I don't think that many people are that out of their head all the time that they would want to kill their own child, but there's got to be some intervention before things get that bad. And yes, families have a role to play, and we can't be sweeping it under the rug anymore. And I do think that it's time to get a bit more tough and a bit more outspoken about it, because how many more women have to die before, and children, unborn children, before we actually take notice? I think the authorities have a big part to play as well, but I don't think it's only on them, because everything does start at home. It starts at home. So, if you know that there's violence going on with a brother-in-law, a sister, someone in the family, a cousin, a niece, a daughter, and you stay on the sidelines and you say, can't do much, leave it to them, that's their business, we can't get involved, then you're really part of the problem. You know what I mean? It's like passive aggressive, because we're not stopping it. And it's a harsh reality, because we have to call it out. I've known of instances where people have told me, oh, that guy there, he's raping the stepdaughter, or some sort of scenario. And I would say, and what have you done about it? Have you reported it? And they say, oh, that's their business. No, we can't get involved. And I would say, but that innocent child has no chance. So you're the adult, we are the adults. And if we know of something going on like that, then we have to stand up and say, hey, this isn't okay. Yeah. So I think it's just time for some tough talk around it. Yeah.
Going back to that phrase, see something, say something. Yeah,
Right.
I really
Yeah.
want to acknowledge Mel Tarakinikini who shared that phrase, and then you mentioned silence promotes violence. Yeah? So those are the two phrases that we can all, share together this evening. And I'm so glad, it's evening here. I know it's still
Mm.
afternoon over there, but this Talanoa, we need more of this Talanoa, eh, Bex?
I think so.
For us to be
It's a
open.
monthly
Yeah,
regular event.
Di na saranga. That's what I was saying to my sister in France, who's going to join us tomorrow. That this is going to be a series,
Mm.
like a movie, part one, part two, part three, because there's so many topics and they all intertwined. And I think it all comes back what you said to the family, alumni,
Yeah.
how we teach our children, but also for us not to sweep things under the carpet. Sa
Yeah.
lewu saranga nangona e wuni takinaka. Like for example, that example. Thank you for sharing that. It's public knowledge that a child or girl has been raped, by a family member, and nobody's opening their mouth. Nobody's going to the authorities. That's a no-no.
Wow. That's horrific to me. I can't imagine. I just think of my own children, just imagine if that's your own child. And for some reason you didn't know what was happening, but other people knew. Imagine. And these are voiceless. So I always say, if we can be a voice for the voiceless, like you and I, and Etta, we're all doing that because we believe so strongly that it's important to do that and use our platforms for good. As you said, like action focused, positive, something we can do about it. And I hope that this Talanoa and my movement and all the people out there speaking about it
Mm.
is encouraging anyone at all in this situation or anyone who knows about a situation to say something and do something. Yeah.
So with your Lewa Strong, what's your vision about that? And I know a lot of our people have been watching your promotion online at the Melanesia Festival, the Fiji Day in New Zealand. Everybody's wearing this beautiful merchandise, Lewa Strong. And would you like to tell us a little bit about it? Where can they get more information, and what's your plan for the future, Bex?
Well, it's really exciting because the movement started as awareness and just with the song, wanting to empower our girls, our Lewas, and give some representation because I really, I've lived and breathed Fijian culture. I've got 4 Fijian children. I've lived there for long. I really saw that some of our Lewas, have potential, but they can never kind of reach their dreams. And so it started off like that. And then it grew as I saw the need and as I experienced more myself, that domestic violence was such a big issue, and so interconnected with mental health and well-being and breaking stigmas. So I wanted to address those things and the gendered roles. And also, as I was raising my own children, start, really talking about it with the kids. And yeah, it blossomed into something much more magnificent than I could have imagined at first because of the support, because people have seen the need as well. And now it's multifaceted because one part of it is representation for our Melanesian women, our beautiful Melanesian women. They feel seen when they see that Buininga on the t-shirt and they see someone that looks a bit like them. They always say to me, "Man, thank you so much for just representing us." And so that's a big part of it. And the other part of it is to start the dialogue around these issues and then have impact and through the arts. So the arts are such a great way to engage, and music. And I'm also very passionate about fashion, and I've had a dream forever to be involved in the fashion scene. As we know, the fashion scene in Fiji has blown up. There's incredible shows. There was one last night for Fiji Fashion Week. And I'm really excited and privileged to be one of the emerging designers at Pacific Fusion Fashion Show here in Auckland next month under the Lewa Strong banner. So I'm using that brand, and I've collaborated with Lavalani in Suva. And we have a brand new collection that is launching under the Lewa Strong banner. And that is really to promote these issues on an international platform. Pacific Fusion Fashion Show feeds into New Zealand Fashion Week, which is major. And then, of course, we have the international fashion platforms, including Fiji Fashion Week, that is all tied in as well. So, and wearing Fiji, we have a few style Fiji. So there's quite a few shows over there now. I'm really excited, and I hope I can be part of that next year. But the idea is to take the slogan, beat your issues, not your lewa, and blast it everywhere. And of course, I'm having to explain to people. They said, "What's lewa?" And I said, "Lewa is you. Lewa is me. Lewa is girl or woman. You know, it's like we don't want to see another lewa die at the expense. You know, like when these men could be getting some help. And so it's just as much about talking to our men. It's addressing it like, hey, you know, like maybe you need to go and get some counseling. Maybe you need to get some help. So I plan to do tours where there is free counseling available, you know, and to really bring the issues out into the front. And the more we talk about things, the easier it gets to talk about them, you know. We remove that awkwardness and that stigma and that negativity around it. Okay. And the other thing is that I want to have various translations available on digital platforms around the issues that I've talked about on my Instagram, like gaslighting, projecting, some of the things that happen in domestic violence situations that maybe don't have labels in Pacific culture. And I've talked to you already, Nay, about it, that, you know, we might have to create some names for these things in different Pacific languages so that they make sense in the context, you know? So
and can you just also explain? I know there's some, you know, the Mwininga, the one with the Fijian hair, but also there's a pretty one with a Indian girl. And I think there's also a European person on that. Can you explain why you want to include the other ethnic groups too, Sassy?
Yeah, because living in Fiji, I mean, it's so diverse, so multicultural. And I really didn't know. I think growing up in New Zealand, you don't know that about Fiji or about the Pacific, you know, that there's not one look. And so I felt like it's not only our Itoke girls that are going through this. And so I've got a part European girl, and I've got a girl that has more of an Indian from Fiji look, and it's a specific look. I had to work with my artist about it, you know, like I want her to look more Pacific. Yeah, so that was the thing. And then there's there she is, and she's got some kind of kiss design on her garment. Yeah, so and then the mokosoy, she's got the mokosoy there in her hair. So I really wanted it to be obvious that these are girls are from Fiji.
Yes.
And there's a fourth girl who's like part Chinese looking. So I really wanted to showcase, you know, because we have different cultures in Fiji. And my next stage is Rotuman and the other Melanesian cultures. So because I've had a lot of requests from people from different cultures saying, can we be part of this? I want to have my identity shown. And I said, okay, like anyone that comes under this banner that's like Pacifica, especially Melanesian, and Rotuma is part of Fiji, so you know it's nice to include our Rotuma and Lewas. Yeah.
Yes, wow. Sa totoo ka sarangay na I'm gonna show your website, your Facebook page. So for those of you who are wanting to follow Ceci's page, this is her Facebook page. Please give her a follow. It's called Lewa Strong. At the moment,
that's for the movement.
Yeah, this is the movement. At the moment, she's got 304 followers. We need 30,000 followers.
Yeah, I haven't pushed it enough. Please do like it.
Yes, so there's 285 likes. We need 20,000 likes. So please follow this page on Facebook. I think it's really important that you know we share this work that she's doing so wonderfully, and you know she's got all this merchandise. And there's our Madam Assistant Speaker, Honorable Speaker Lenora Gerger here showcasing one of her merchandise. So Vinaka Bex for being so brave, you know, to show you know, some of the merchandise here. Lewa Strong looks like she's standing here with her sister-in-law, I'm sure,
Yes,
in
I think.
Auckland. Yeah, so
She
it's
told me
really
to block the
wonderful.
faces.
Right. So this is wonderful. Has there been any response from our Indian community? I know we have some our brothers and sisters of Fiji Indian descent listening to us today. Would you like to
Oh,
share a little bit
awesome.
about that, Bex?
Oh, thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, this is a really big passion point for me that especially I think when I, well, all the time I've lived in Fiji, but living in Taviuni, the culture's really blended well over there in Vanuatu.
Mm,
You'd know that everyone sort of speaks each other's languages and things, and um, you know, I got to live in a very diverse sort of a settlement community where you could hear the Muslim kind of chanting going on a Friday, and you hear like Hindu prayers and songs, and then you hear the Christians having their devotions, and it was like united. And I really felt at that point like all of Fiji needs to feel like this. And in Suva, it's a bit different. I didn't always feel that way. So I'd really love to see more unity at the events, like at my music events. I'd love our Indian community to really be involved. I know that domestic violence is very high stats in our Indian community in Fiji and in Auckland as well, or New Zealand, but Auckland is the main, hub. So I've had, I've even had neighbors in Fiji, women tell me like, oh, terrible stories. I don't even want to talk about the stories, but basically that they really had no support at all, and very poor treatment and no way of reaching out for help. So I want you all to know that you're part of the movement, and this is for all Fijians. Yeah, it's something that we need to tackle as a whole community.
Thank you, Bex, for doing this for our women in general. What are your thoughts about our men? We've talked about it too, that we need to, there's always two sides to a story. Giving the support for our men. While we are, wrapping up our Talanoa today, what are your thoughts about that? Because you talked about it earlier on, how the gendered roles would have an impact on how men treat our women, but also how men deal with the emotions, how they deal with jealousy, how they deal with competition. Would you like to say something to that too, Bex?
Yeah, so I read something recently about the ego in human beings, that from when we're born, that we're not born with an ego, but that it develops at about 18 months. And that's very interesting to me. And I think at that point, as parents, we have to nurture the ego in a way that's not going to overinflate it, but it's also going to give people a healthy sense of confidence in who they are, as children, that they're loved, that they're safe, that they are valued and, worthy of love and all these things. And I think that the biggest thing is being present as parents. And, what happens is if you don't nurture the ego in a healthy way, we get this narcissistic behavioral tendencies, this kind of disorder of children overinflating their own ego. They're trying to build themselves up to a point of almost a false sense of ego, like a false sense of who they are, and it's like beyond reality. And this is when the narcissism takes over, and it's really common. It's really common in our community to see that happening. And so as much as it stings a bit for parents, we have to take some responsibility there. Because, that's actually something that can develop in children who don't get the right attention they need. And if you're just given hidings all the time for speaking up, when really they just want some attention, they just want to say, hey, I'm here. I need your attention. I need you to show me you love me. If you just get off the phone and give them some attention, and we're all guilty for it. I am too, for being on our phones and being into our work and being distracted and, wanting to be at the grog session. And I would just plead with our men. Kava sessions will be there tomorrow, next week, the year after that, every day. They're always there. So you have to pick and choose your moments. Don't make it so easy to escape family life. If you always feel like you're just trying to escape and run away, then that's when we get that broken relationship thing happening. I would say lean into your family, lean in. We all need to lean in. And now women too, like choose to spend time with the children and with your husband and really invest in each other and, put God at the center, and then it should be a perfect, setup. But Easier said than done. I know we all get frustrated. We all have hard times. Everyone feels stressed, but it's a good thing to remember, lean in, don't run away. You know, try to lean in more and don't feel like you have to escape all the time.
Yes, totoo ka nga eh. Nakapakaliw Bex for for sharing that. I think tomorrow our sister in France, Vika Rawada, that I'll be talking to, she's also bringing in the issue of Yangona drinking.
Yes.
Social gatherings or social events are good at the end of the weekend, but not maybe every night or not spending quality time with your wife and your children. And I think it comes back to that because you can only have a good communication with your family members if you're there with them. Yeah, you cannot communicate to them when you're not there. So it's really important that you are. If you're physically there, then you need to be mentally present too.
Yeah.
Like as you said, put the phone away. Take all the distractions away, all the tablet, all the laptop, turn everything off, and just have a good time with the family. Sebab Ceci?
Have a devotion together, have a sing song, come back to the old fashioned ways of entertaining ourselves, go outside and do something together, go for a walk or whatever. But, it's easier I think it's harder in the modern city life, urban areas than it is, when we lived in Tavini, no power, very simple life. Okay, so we go for a walk and forage for some food and we'll come back and cook together. Okay, we're scrubbing our clothes, old-fashioned way, and we're talanoaing under the mango tree. Things are sort of easier in that way because we've stripped back all the technology, but technology gets in there and it really distracts us from spending time together.
Yeah.
And at my church, one of the pastors said that him and his wife are learning to babysit their phones. And I thought, what does that mean? And what he said is, we're learning to tell it when to go to bed, not it tell us when to go to bed. So he said, we actually put our phones on charger in the lounge, in the sitting room, and then we go to bed without it. And it's really transformed even their communication with each other.
There you go.
Because it's like the phone is not in the picture and they get better rest as well. I thought, interesting, it's something for us all to be mindful of. Myself, I'm terrible. I always have the phone right beside me all the time. And yeah, it's something I've just thought about, like babysitting. It's a good
babysitting your phone, yeah, putting your phone to sleep while you have your own sleep. It's very important. Yes, man, Vinaka sir, Ceci, for your time today. Unfortunately, to our listeners, um, or then another Etta Ngonerongo is not able to join us, but I'll try and organize an interview with her as well, maybe next week if she's free, for her to also share her story. So, Ceci, before we finish our Talanoa, any last comments or any advice, maybe to a young man and a young woman who may be going through some tough times right now? What would you say to them?
I would say that the things that we've talked about today, like speaking up and that, silence promotes violence, those are really good take-home lessons for us. And also just if you feel like you're not coping in your life in any way at all, and if there's something telling you, okay, I'm feeling stressed or angry or whatever, depressed, get help. You're only going to help your family out. Don't worry about what other people think, because at the end of the day, you're racing on your own path. You're on your own journey and no one else is in that journey. So go and get the help you need. It's actually just health. It's mental health is health, just think of it like going to the doctor for a checkup. It's just a standard thing that you should do and you'll feel so much better for it. We always feel better when we talk. So have a talk with a friend or go and see a counselor. Do what you got to do, but we never want to use the fist. We want to beat our issues and not our lewa.
So wow, what a way to end our Talanoa today. Yeah, so beat our issues and not our lewa. So Vinaka Bakalevu, Ceci, for spending some amazing quality time, 1 hour exactly. Today I know you have your little boy with you, Jairi. But we're just so happy and privileged that you can be on my platform today to share your Talanoa and share some tips to those of our folks that are listening in today. Nakavalim Sara says we will share your page to our listeners. Please go on Facebook, find Lewa Strong, and please give her a follow and like her page. And she's going to be posting a lot of amazing work she's doing, the merchandise and also the fashion show that she's going to be part of in the coming month. Anything else you want to share before we finish?
No, that's all. Thank you. Just keep an eye out on the pages and you'll see all the updates about the things that are coming up soon. Thank you so much, Nay, for taking the time to address these really important issues.
Nakavalevo. What month and love to the family in Nokalandi.
Naka Mode.
Mother. Wow, what a beautiful Talanoa session. Yeah, I just had with Sassy, binibina ka bikoyan, and so lito na nongona, may Talanoa bikenda na ka binang nikua, sigilistik mo na lotu, na siginikua ko pati ka na lumiyan dorbo, marutaka ni Rani may wasi toko na kaya lako rumah, ni maramado lang sere, baka ang tako ko na non programo ni lang sere, me wasi kinoko na bika, Rani da wasi kanrenre me wasi na matana leo, bitu tingutak kinoko na non programo, na Lewa Strong. Kaya ngole na Facebook, chukin na Facebook page, sa libo talaga na wekandar sa bule na sikleti, yara tambo chukin na ngone leo ni Biti, ngone leo ni India, ngone leo ni Loma, ngone leo ni China, and ndagari kinongon na kaya ndastap chukin na bimata mobile, taray kendo baka yandun tua. Siang wala nga nito nga na mata tam sa kaya ni kende kende. Babi ni binakabikim ni na siyam tiku miniko, nakabali po rin din talatala kanista rambe, tiku talaga non retabi na lotu, ni talatala, rin talatala, kikenta talaga ni tumbu-tumbu ng bimbi ni non, tabi susumay bale. Babi ni binakabikim ni tumbu-tumbu, bin garabi bale, siya ni karaw-raw, nakanta la ko duro matiko ye kem kanta bi usitaka so na bi ngon sale so me dabak muria bi binakatikina na Bula na bi sin ketsar totok sar bakote kem ni naturanga dala kambimbi mo ni wase talaga na no ni renreo ni la ko duro matiko me dabi wasikin nakabakalevo sabak madani bi kem ni mata ni made